Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Menasa Talks. And today we continue to delve into the journey of entering the United States ecosystem. And with us today, I'm very fortunate to have a former colleague from Salesforce and a VP in the services industry working with Salesforce capabilities, Dan Grandquist. Thanks for being on the show today, Dan.
Thank you, Faruk. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
You're very welcome, Dan. Well, just to give the audience a little bit of context, and you a little bit of context, what we try to do here is help our cohorts, and we have a lot of Pakistan-based offshore companies, and these folks are always diligently looking for opportunities to provide services. One of the ecosystems we don't have a lot of exposure to is Salesforce, interestingly enough. As you know, there's plenty of Indian offshore partners in that space. I, as a matter of fact, try to encourage people to look at the Salesforce ecosystem. You and I have a unique heritage there. So that is the premise of the discussion today for our audience. Dan, what I'd love to start out with is just you giving us a little bit of a background on Dan Grandquist and what you're doing today, and then we'll get into some more details.
So I came up through the world as a Java developer, and that's how I got to Salesforce. I was a Java and front-end developer with an expertise in metadata frameworks and front-end development. So I kind of came in through that world, and I became an architect, and then I started helping larger and larger clients, and I am one of those people who really, really loves the understanding the business side and the technical side together. So Salesforce was a great fit, and I very much loved my journey there and became an expert in the professional services space. I was with Salesforce Professional Services, and our clients were all the professional services companies. That was the industry I was part of. So a lot of the outsourcing, a lot of the OSP side, those folks. And then eventually a friend of mine called me and said, hey, there's this wonderful company called T-Tech. Would you be interested in running our Salesforce services practice? And I said, I would love to. It sounded fun. So I ended up here. My background's a lot in AI, a lot in Salesforce as a core platform. But again, I still hold on to that kind of forward-thinking, kind of how are we going to use the technologies kind of mindset.
Very cool. No, Dan, thank you. That's great. And that's part of the reason I think, when you and I connected, we connected briefly on a professional layer, and then I think we've rekindled that through this relationship. One of the things I wanted to ask you, Dan, and I know that's, and I'm asking you from the perspective of someone who's worked heavily in this ecosystem, who's worked with professional services providers. We're trying to bring learning lessons to the folks offshore, right? So if you were in a situation today where you're looking at evaluating, a lower cost of resourcing coupled with some AI capability around the Salesforce ecosystem, what are things that you would look for that immediately would jump out at you?
So there's kind of two ways I think about it, because one, we're an outsourcing company, so we have a very large call center presence. And so I think about it from the lens of how our call centers are going to change and how those things, what world they live in. And as well as from a Salesforce lens, how AI is going to change what we do. And let me talk about the Salesforce lens first, because I think it's the simplest. So Salesforce has really put in a lot of work into the agentic AI layer, which is basically just smart agents being assistive of people. Now, what that really means, and the kind of geek technology of it, so there's all the large language models we've been talking about in the last year and a half, which are really good at generating things. And then there's these reasoning engines you put on top of them, which really is how they interact with people. And Salesforce's point of view on that is that those reasoning engines are going to be built around the actions they can do, the things they can interact with. Right. So that's kind of what their point has been in the last year. And it really has resonated, and I think it's a really good way to think about it in the market, because as AIs are really not going to replace people, they're going to augment people.
Mm-hmm.
And people who understand that they know how to put AI into their workflow. So like developers who understand how to use AI generated code in their development, either on the Salesforce platform in any part of the world, that is going to be an incredibly important skill to understand, because AI is going to change our way of working. It's not going to replace us. So
very interesting.
Yeah.
I like that, and I can appreciate what you're saying very much. It makes a lot of sense. So in the context of people, let's say, sitting offshore, right, and you honed right in and said, hey, how are you incorporating AI into your capabilities? What are some areas within the Salesforce ecosystem where you've seen other offshore providers bring a lot of value, right? Because there's a learning lesson in that for these folks.
Yeah, so there's a number of ways in the outsourcing world where AI is really changing the way things are. There's real-time speech translation, so you can deliver services in English even if you don't have an English-speaking population.
Right.
You can do a lot of translation around dealing with gaps in things like accent and intonation. You can also do a lot of things in figuring out, getting real-time metrics about the call, providing the agent just-in-time stuff, up and so forth. What the agentic part has really changed is really how much of those agent-to-customer interactions are going to be agent versus a call center, are going to be AI agent versus a call center agent. Now, there has been a ton of people who have jumped all in saying, we're going total AI agents. And almost all of them have backed off. And there's some really amazing examples. AT&T, McDonald's, a lot of these people who really jumped in. And a lot of them have actually not only had to back off, but they've also had to restaff call center agents. Because right now, the technology isn't there. And because they're not thinking about that way of working, they're not getting the implementations right.
Understood.
If I think about it this way, in the 1950s, GM, the largest motor company in the world at the time, they had floors and floors of people who did nothing but drafting. They took designs, they copied those designs, and that's how that was done. Along came computer-aided design, and now all of that can be done with a click of a mouse button. So you need one guy doing a design, and the rest of the designs can just happen from that. GM still employs more designers than they did when they needed the floors and floors of people doing design. And I think AI is going to be very similar to that. Because when you think about the work and the flow of call center work, there's the IVR things that we have today. And as much as they kind of do replace people, nobody likes the experience. They all want to get to a human. They all want to get to a person where they can have that one-on-one connection.
Right.
Okay. So we're not going to extend that IVR experience into the flow of work, because that's the worst part of the experience for most customers. What's going to happen is we're going to actually back up the agent into the IVR experience, and then give the agent a whole host of AIs working for the agent. Agents feeding them the right information, giving them the right eyepieces, listening to the phone calls, giving real-time feedback. Agents that are doing specific things that so if I need to change my address, I can say, Faruk, I'm going to hand you off to my AI agent. He's going to figure out your address, that stuff, and he's going to do all the checking for me, and he's going to hand me back as soon as you guys are done.
Very interesting.
Yeah, that's going to be more like what those interactions are going to be. And there's going to be work for people whose job it is to nothing but jump into an AI agent interaction, and unstick the interaction to say, hey, sounds like you're having problems getting in your billing reconciliation happening, and what seems to be the issue? Oh, okay, well, here, I'm going to set you down this path. There you go. Again, we're changing the way of working. We're not necessarily using less people.
Understood. Oh, that makes sense. No, that's an interesting observation, and the one thing that I can kind of relate to, it was a little earlier on, but I working with United Airlines now, right? And now the chat interaction, and these people are managing multiple chats, right?
Right.
So they're triaging where they need to triage. So a person can now handle 6 different interactions at one go versus one-to-one versus voice. So that makes sense. Yeah, I get that. So based on that, Dan, so if I were to kind of recap this for the folks out there, what you're basically saying is that getting familiar with how these business processes are stuck today, and then finding solutions to help people unstick these processes where there's a lot of bottleneck, and providing that value within, let's say, the Salesforce ecosystem. But how do these people now position themselves to a larger local integrator who says, hey, I know I'm using AI, but why should I be using offshore versus just AI and my onshore resources? What are your raw thoughts around something like that?
Well, so the first one is empathy. Empathy is the number one thing that changes your customer's opinion about you. If your call center experience is not empathetic, if you're the phone company, that everyone knows how it feels to call those impersonal, I can't help you with your problem people. The skill of the AI generation is going to be human empathy. It's going to be those people who can make a one-to-one connection. Think about call center metrics today. Right now we have, time to close on a call, time to resolution, things like that, abandon rate.
Right.
Think about what's going to be different in the call center of the future, where a lot of those things where they take a lot of time can be handed off to an AI, but then come back to a person. Your ability to task switch, your ability to manage multiple calls, and your ability to establish a connection with the customer and really empathize with that customer, that's going to be how call centers are going to be run. And those are the skills that people need to start really understanding. And they also need to understand how AIs work and how to talk to them.
Very interesting. That makes a lot of sense. It leads me to another, this is good, and I'm trying to build this up, though. So an observation that I made is that, we had these traditional systems in place where, okay, I need this solution deployed. You worked in the professional services schema. Someone's doing a services deployment, right? So they're saying, okay, you know what? I need local project management. I need a solution architect. But there's a lot of basic function that I can ship off to India or Pakistan or Ukraine or whatever. Now, with the advent of AI coming in, and I know you've seen this firsthand, with the AI components also being these agentic capabilities being built and that are self-learning and growing, what do you see shifting in the offshore landscape? What do you, if you were to just be someone sitting there saying, here's what I think could happen in the offshore scenarios? I'm curious to get your opinion on that. What do you see that turning into?
I think when we get the tools right, there's some problems with the tools today, and and it doesn't matter whether it's code generation or live chat agents or any of those things. We're still getting them right in a lot of ways, I think. But once we get them right, I think the real thing that's going to make people shine is their ability to seamlessly work as not an individual, but as a team. And that team may be a bunch of AIs. Let's go back to the offshore model when it first started. We tried to
Right.
hire a bunch of developers offshore in the mid 90s, and it didn't work very well because, the flow of work just didn't make any sense. I can't assign
Sure.
a user story to somebody in India and hope they get it right. It wasn't until we really built that structure around it where we have a lead and we have a whole team, and that we don't hand that lead a task, we hand them, here's a set of prioritized tasks and here's a schedule to get them done. That same kind of methodology is going to happen in this future world when AIs work a lot better. That person, that lead, is going to be an offshore resource that you're going to hand, and them and all their AIs are going to do the work.
Understood. Out of your, just in your experience so far, I mean, we've just started into this world. What, without, I mean, obviously divulging trade secrets and stuff like that, what are you guys internally doing to build up or bone up your own AI capabilities? Is that something you can talk about in a generic perspective?
Well, like everybody else, we have a lot of expertise internally. One of the reasons why they hired me was, the level of expertise, and we have, again, you can kind of hear what our point of view is based on my point of view. And so we're kind of building that kind of structure, and we're trying to be one of the people who get it right. And I think the people who are not trying that right now are kind of going dinosaur, the way of the dinosaur.
Very quickly.
Because you're not in, and this is the big thing, is that I don't think offshore has been a low cost chase. You mentioned Ukraine, everybody was afraid of the next country that was cheaper.
Yeah.
I don't think that dynamic's going to stick around very long. I think it's really going to be about people, and it's going to be about empathy, and it's going to be about where you can get good people at reasonable prices.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, good. That segues into the next, and my own kind of, after being in this environment and talking to multiple people. So the one thing that, and I'm sure you've seen this, is the kind of price tags we're now seeing floated for the next AI, evolution, right? Or and it's just mind-boggling, right? The kind of wages that are being offered out. In your opinion, so let's say today, someone who understands this environment, who's at an architect level and layer in the U.S., right, and they're being tasked to do this, would you see relevance in these offshore players focusing on building themselves into that? Because then they can still provide that AI architectural capability, but still provide the cost arbitrage, right? Because of where their operating bases are. What are your thoughts on that?
So it's a great question. So if I think about AI in a framework, I think about things in frameworks. So the framework I think about AI is as in kind of copies a lot of the stuff from Salesforce's point of view, which is It's about a role. An AI has a role. They have a set of data. They have a group of actions. They have a set of guardrails, and then they have a channel.
Right.
That maps pretty well to a set of skill sets. So role, that's about defining business analyst outcomes. Really, it's about organizational change management. It's about understanding the people and so forth. And you can kind of see what those skill sets are. And then data, this is where offshore really fits in, because we're about to try to map every relational database we have put together in the last 20 years to a new place.
Sure.
Yeah, nobody's ready for this. And it's and AI, everything we shove into AI has to be translated into certain ways. I'll give you a really brief example. AI doesn't understand time. So if I have a start date on a case and an end date on a case, that's useless to an AI. It needs to be mapped to a duration.
Gotcha.
Now, think about all of the data mapping that we're going to have to do in the next year.
Yeah.
So AI, so we have data, We have actions. Actions are how AI are going to interact with people. We're going to ask them to do very specific things. We want those actions to be really well defined and well programmed. That's the exact programming we're doing today in Offshore. Guardrails is about testing, and AI testing is a whole new world. And even with AI test tools, you're still doing a whole lot of prompt engineering. And this is the skill set that everybody's kind of missing. Everybody. Engineering a prompt to get out of an AI what you want and to understand the boundaries of it is not the same as writing test code for a test system. And it requires a whole new skill set and a whole way of thinking. And the future of personal identifiable information security, cybersecurity, all of this relies on people that understand that. And then channels is the same, IVR, chat, SMS stuff we've been working on before. So there's a lot of places where people can slot in.
Interesting.
They don't all have to be, understand. They don't all have to be building their own LLM at home.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's pertinent, right? So tell me a little more about what that you just led into my next question. So again, you're in it. We don't all have the answers, but what do you see as the convergence of LLMs, and how does that impact us overall?
So there's two things that I see that are coming down the road. First is we're running out of public data. So we've trained. So almost all of our LLMs have been trained on public data. We're running out of it. So when public data runs out, then the only people who are going to train new LLMs are people who have large amounts of data. That's not going to be you and I, Faruk. I don't have as many emails as I get a day. I don't have enough to train an LLM. But
likewise.
So LLMs are going to become a commodity.
Right.
Now the other piece of that is that they're going to become a commodity because our technology is getting good enough now that they're able to pull the personal identifiable information out of LLMs, even ones that were trained and with masking. So the danger of training your own LLM is also going up. So LLMs are going to become a commodity. There's going to be 3 of them, and you're going to buy one of those 3.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Which also, if I look at it from the perspective of an offshore, that increases the efficacy of an offshore because now you're standardizing what your source of knowledges are, right? And now can you do it better, faster, cheaper, right? That's going to be the premise, right? Man, this is great, Dan. I really enjoyed chatting with you. It's always great to get the perspective of a local player and practitioner. I wanted to thank you very much for, it took us a little while to get this coordinated. So thank you again for coming on and sharing this with us. I'm sure you're going to get some interesting queries post. So I will be reaching back to you probably with some of those. But thank you again very much for coming on the show.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for reaching out. I really enjoyed this.